Hello my friends, I'm Sergey Gusev. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing great because today I will show how to paint a portrait in oils using Arteza oils and Arteza 11x14 inches canvas. Use my coupon code to get 10% off on anything you want to buy from their amazing online web store. They have a lot of products for hobby and professional artists. Just follow the links in the description. You can also help me out and share this video with your friends on your favorite social network. I'll be happy if you put thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to visit my webpage and download the full video tutorials. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Okay, if you're ready, let's get started. And you can see that I have another drawing on canvas which I traced. You can actually draw it freehand if you want, but if you don't have enough time, you can also trace it just to find a good place for the head, for the portrait, because composition is really important for any painting or drawing. And right now I'm going to make a quick underpainting. I'm using a soft, middle-sized synthetic brush, burnt umber, and some thinner. You can take any thinner or any medium you personally like. Remember about the big spots when making this kind of underpainting. So don't care a lot for details right now. We will have enough time to work on the details, but right now we need to work on the big spots, and I always suggest to start out from the darker ones. Like in this case, if you look at the source picture, you'll see that we have a big spot, dark spot over the hair. So I stained it. No details, just one big dark spot. I used only Arteza raw umber. Then I start working on the eyes, darkening in the irises, pupils, drawing the eyelids. But again, not a lot of details. Don't try to finish anything right away. We start from the big things, big planes of the head and so on, and work on the details only at the very end. This is a classical way of painting or drawing. If you want to draw, we also start from the big things. Right now I'm adding a tiny bit of burnt sienna because I want to make this color slightly warmer, more reddish, so we need to add something warm. It can be red ochre, for example, or in this case burnt sienna, which I personally like very much. Let's darken in the nostrils, corners of the lips. Again, if you look at the source picture, you will see that we have not just a portrait, but also a hand, which is mostly in the shadow. So let's darken in that shadow as well. I'm not drawing a lot right now. Mostly I'm just painting big things, big planes or big spots, whatever you want to call it, but not small tiny details. The portrait is quite light, we don't have a lot of shadows, but we have a lot of halftones. And we will have to work a lot on the halftones to make this head look volumetric, picturesque, and generally well done. Darken on the side surface of the head. I'm using more burnt sienna right now, but you can see that I'm not using any white, for example, because we never use white for underpainting. It's better to use transparent colors like umbers, ochres, siennas, some ultramarine and so on, but I would suggest to avoid cadmiums, cobalts, white, and so on. Yeah, and right now I start to add some titanium white. Just because we have a lot of light, and I think it does make a lot of sense to continue working without white. So we can start working with white, careful and not too much white. Just start working on the lights. But don't forget that we still have to go back to the drawing site and correct the proportions, facial details, construction of the head, and lots of other basic things. So when we paint, we can't forget about drawing. We actually have to draw and paint at the same time. So we don't just judge colors. We have to remember about values, construction, proportions, and other basics I'm always talking on this channel. I'm blocking in the background as well. It's quite light. It's very neutral. I wouldn't say it's cold or warm, but at the very end, I would turn it to cold white because I want to make it more interesting. So we have some warm halftones on the portrait, and then I want to add more cold, cool, slightly bluish halftones into the background. I mean, we don't have to paint exactly what we see on the source picture. Of course, we take the proportions, likeness, but I think we can more or less change the colors. You can actually use a bigger brush for the backgrounds, especially if you are an advanced artist, not just a beginner. It would be even more convenient to paint the backgrounds with a bigger brush, but actually it's up to you. Right now I'm going to work a little more on the construction of the nose and eyes. So we'll have to recall everything we know about the facial details construction. And if you have some difficulties, I would suggest to make small drawings, small sketches, studies of the facial details, so you better understand how it all works and looks like. I like using Arteza oils, they're quite strong. You don't have to use a lot of paint to get a nice deep color, which is always a good sign. And when I mix any color with white, I get a very nice, clean color, which is also a very good sign because sometimes you get something muddy, or sometimes you have to use a lot of paint to get a mixture you want to get, but not with Arteza colors. They are well done and very professional. If you have never painted with oils by Arteza, I think and suggest that you should do it. Right now I'm working on the lights, adding cool tints. I don't suggest to use a lot of medium right now at this stage. So try to paint thicker, and actually Arteza oils allow to paint thicker, and you can use them for impasto paintings. I'm adding a tiny bit of cadmium red and ultramarine just to get that cold purplish tint for the light on the forehead. Again, remember that the light source is quite cold, and if you look at the source picture, you'll of course notice that the halftones are warmer and lights are quite cold. So we need to use more white, more, I would say even ultramarine, cadmium red, sometimes lemon yellow for the lights, and for the shadows, for the halftones, I would suggest using some burnt sienna, a little bit of ochre yellow, not too much though, less white, and maybe sometimes cadmium lemon as well. Right now I'm working on the pupils of the eyes with Arteza detailed brushes. They are really great for these purposes. They have round, soft, pointed tips, and we can work on the very small details. It's very convenient to paint and draw at the same time. It's really important to work on the eyes. This is the central of the portrait, the most important and of course difficult part of the portrait. Remember that the sclera is not going to be pure white, and of course the highlights are not going to be pure white. You can see that I'm using quite a lot of ultramarine to get that bluish tint. Just a tiny bit of ultramarine by Arteza is enough to get this nice, kind of bluish, cold light highlight in the eyes. You can see that there are highlights not just on the surface of the cornea, but also on the sclera. Maybe they're not so visible, but they exist. We need to remember about them and try to paint. And actually, when you compare the highlights on the sclera and the sclera itself, you will understand that the sclera itself is darker than the highlights, so we can't use pure white for the sclera. Otherwise we won't be able to paint the highlights. I hope it doesn't sound super complicated, which is actually not complicated. But there are some things we need to know before we start painting a portrait, so I think this is one of the really important moments to remember when you work on the eyes. You can also see that I don't paint the sclera entirely the same color. That part which turns to the light source is lighter and slightly cooler, and the part which turns away from the light source is slightly darker and warmer. Right now you can see it really well. And you know why it happens? I actually talk about this probably in every video. It happens just because the eyeball is basically a sphere, so it's not flat, it's volumetric. So some parts will be lighter and cooler, and some parts darker and warmer, because they either turn to the light source or turn away. This is a very simple basic thing you need to know and understand. You can apply this to anything you paint. I mean, not just in a portrait, but if you work on a figure or landscape, cityscape, still life, anything, you have to remember about the light source and understand these basic things, that some parts are light and some parts are dark. Okay, I think it's going quite fine with the portrait. Let's work on the hand. Quite a complicated form, actually. Again, remember that we have a lot of shadow over there. Right now I'm working actually on the shadow. I'm using quite a lot of burnt sienna by Arteza. The shadow is going to be warmer, slightly reddish, and the lights are going to be lighter and cooler. So actually you can see that we apply the same rules we apply to the portrait. When we paint the hand, we remember about the light source, construction, values, proportions, and so on. And when you understand those basics, nothing is going to be very complicated to paint. I think actually when we work on a hand, it's really important to remember about the proportions. So compare it with the face, don't make the hand too big or too small. So you kind of have to look at the portrait once in a while and compare it. And then I'm sure you won't make big mistakes, or maybe you won't make any mistake at all. Remember to paint the hair quite softly. Please don't make hard edges, and also don't look for details in the hair. At least right now on this stage we need to paint it just as a dark spot. Maybe add some reflection, so it's not just like one black spot over there. We need to paint some reflections from the light source, from the other objects around, so you can add more lighter colors, and I added a bit of yellow ochre, and maybe I would suggest to add even a tiny bit of burnt sienna. And right now I think as we're going closer to the end, though we still have a lot of things to correct, I'm going to work on the facial details more carefully. Actually, it takes time.
I think it's okay, so it actually can take a few hours to complete these facial details. I mean, don't worry if it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes we really need to spend time and do it really well. It's also really important for the likeness. So right now I'm trying to correct the eyes, eyelids, and so on. And yes, it's time to work on the other eye. It really needs a lot of work actually. I'm trying to draw right now, work on the shape of the eyelids. Again, I'm using Arteza detail brushes because they're super great for this purpose. I'm working on the shape of the eye, proportions, and then on the values and colors. Just correcting big and small things. The same I'm going to do with the lips. Also correct the shape of the lips, values. I'm drawing a little bit more right now. Remember about the corners of the lips, they're really important for us, for likeness as well, by the way. I want to add some cooler tints around, because that area actually catches a lot of light. Yeah, I think it's looking better right now though. I need to correct it a bit more. At this stage I'm making a lot of small corrections which I think are not really visible on this video. But when you work on a portrait, I think there are lots of small things which are really important for likeness. it can take time to complete this hand. Actually, you probably know that hands are very complicated for painting and drawing, so it can take a lot of hours, maybe as many as for the portrait itself. But again, we need to apply the same basic rules, and then I'm sure it's going to be quite a good painting of the hand. So remember about proportion, construction, tonal values, light source, and some other things. Don't make a lot of contrast over there, because this is a portrait with a hand, so the hand isn't the main object. It should be painted softer, with less attention and less contrast. You can see right now how I'm working on the very small things. Just softening the edges of the lips, working on the area around, so no big changes at this stage. At the very end of this painting, I want to work on the very small things like almost invisible halftones. I want to soften them, add some lighted tints on the forehead, on the cheekbone. So I'm making some quick touch-ups here and there, and I think I'm going to finish this portrait quite soon.
Okay, that's it. I hope you really liked this tutorial. You can help me out and share this video with your friends on your favorite social network. Put thumbs up if you like it. Find me on Instagram and Facebook. Don't forget to visit me on my... Don't forget to visit my website and download the full video tutorials. Yes. Okay, I think that's it. I wish you good luck with your own artworks and see you in my next episode.